Have you ever been so sick that you thought, I would do absolutely anything just to feel better right now? Throughout history, that exact desperation has been the biggest glitch in human survival, because for thousands of years, the people we trusted to save our lives were actually the ones speeding up our deaths. We tend to think of history as a slow march toward progress and enlightenment, but when it comes to medicine, human history looks more like a horror movie written by a mad scientist. From drinking radioactive water for energy to swallowing live parasites for weight loss, humanity has tried some truly mind-boggling things in the name of health. Based on the incredible book Quackery by Lydia Kang and Nate Peterson, today we are going to look at the worst, the deadliest, and the absolute stupidest ways humans have ever tried to cure themselves. Welcome to History Glitch, where we explore the fatal errors in the human operating system. Let's start with a chemical that we all know is incredibly toxic today: mercury. If you break a thermometer today, you call poison control. But for centuries, doctors treated mercury like it was a magical reset button for the human body. From the ancient Chinese emperors to Abraham Lincoln, everyone was consuming mercury. The logic back then was based on the four humors theory, which basically meant your body was a sack of fluids, and if you were sick, the fluids were unbalanced. The fastest way to balance them? Force everything out. Mercury was a heavy metal that irritated the digestive tract so violently that it caused extreme vomiting and diarrhea. Doctors saw this and thought, look, the medicine is working. The sickness is leaving the body. They didn't realize they were literally poisoning their patients. Abraham Lincoln famously took blue mass pills for his depression and mood swings. These pills were loaded with mercury. It wasn't until he noticed he was experiencing extreme rage, insomnia, and tremors, classic signs of heavy metal poisoning, that he stopped taking them just before his presidency. He survived the cure, but countless others did not. They lost their teeth, their hair, their sanity, and eventually their lives. All because the medical establishment insisted that drinking liquid metal was good for you. But as humanity moved into the modern era, you would think we got smarter, right? Not exactly. We just found newer, more high-tech ways to poison ourselves. Enter the 1900s and the discovery of radium. When Marie Curie discovered this glowing, radioactive element, the world lost its mind. People didn't understand radiation yet. They just saw a magical rock that emitted heat and glowed in the dark. Naturally, they assumed it must be packed with life-giving energy. Companies started putting radium in everything. There was radium toothpaste for a brighter smile, radium face creams for glowing skin, and even radium-laced water marketed as a sports drink. The most famous case of this radioactive glitch was a man named Eben Byers. He was a wealthy American socialite and athlete who injured his arm. His doctor recommended a popular new medicine called Radithor, which was literally just distilled water infused with lethal amounts of radium. Byers loved it. He claimed it gave him endless energy and drank up to 3 bottles a day for years. By the time he realized something was wrong, his bones were disintegrating from the inside out. The radiation had eaten away his skull, and his jaw literally detached from his face. He died a horrific death, and his body was so radioactive that he had to be buried in a lead-lined coffin. To this day, his bones are still emitting radiation. It took the death of a high-profile millionaire for the public to realize that drinking glowing atomic energy might not be the best health decision. If drinking radiation sounds bad, how about swallowing a live monster? In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the obsession with achieving the perfect, slender figure led to one of the most disgusting diets in human history, the tapeworm diet. The pitch was simple and incredibly appealing to anyone struggling to lose weight. You swallow a pill containing a sterilized tapeworm cyst. The tapeworm hatches in your intestines and eats a portion of the food you consume. You get to eat whatever you want, as much as you want, and the worm takes the calories. You lose weight, and when you reach your goal, you just take another pill to kill the worm and poop it out. It sounds like a bizarre science fiction concept, but people actually did this. The reality, however, was a biological nightmare. Tapeworms don't just politely eat your excess calories. They cause malnutrition, severe abdominal pain, nausea, and they can grow up to 30 feet long inside your body. Even worse, the tapeworms could travel outside the digestive system, forming cysts in the liver, eyes, or even the brain, causing seizures and death. And getting rid of them wasn't as simple as taking a pill. Sometimes doctors had to use highly toxic chemicals to paralyze the worm, hoping the patient would survive the cure. It was the ultimate cheat code for weight loss, but the glitch was that you were inviting a lethal parasite to live inside you. Now, let's talk about the oldest and most universally trusted glitch in medical history: bloodletting. For over 2,000 years, the smartest doctors in the world genuinely believed that if you were sick, it was because you simply had too much blood. Whether you had a fever, a broken leg, or a stomach ache, the prescription was always the same: open a vein and drain the patient. The idea was to let the bad blood out. Barbers were actually the ones who performed this procedure, which is why the traditional barber pole has red and white stripes. The red represents the blood, and the white represents the bandages. This procedure killed millions of people by weakening them when their bodies needed strength the most. The most famous victim of this medical error was George Washington, the first president of the United States. In 1799, Washington caught a severe throat infection. Instead of letting him rest, his doctors rushed in and decided the best course of action was to drain his blood. Over the course of a single day, they drained about 80 ounces of blood from his body. That is nearly half of his entire blood volume. Unsurprisingly, a 67-year-old man battling a severe infection did not survive losing half of his blood in a few hours. Washington didn't die from the throat infection. He was accidentally bled to death by the best doctors money could buy. Finally, we cannot talk about historical medical errors without mentioning arsenic. Today, arsenic is known as a weapon for assassins and a poison for rats. But in the Victorian era, it was a beauty secret. Women were told that consuming small amounts of arsenic would give them a clear, pale complexion and sparkling eyes. And technically, it did work, but for the worst possible reason. The arsenic was slowly destroying their red blood cells, which made their skin incredibly pale, and it dilated their pupils, making their eyes look large and bright. They were achieving the ultimate beauty standard by putting their bodies into a state of slow, toxic shock. If you took too much, you died a painful death. If you tried to stop taking it, your body would go into withdrawal, causing severe skin breakouts and illness, trapping you in a deadly cycle of addiction to rat poison just to look pretty. Looking back at these historical glitches, it is a miracle that humanity survived at all. Our ancestors drank radioactive water, swallowed liquid metal, hosted giant parasites, and drained their own blood, all because an authority figure told them it was a good idea. It is a terrifying reminder that the human brain is capable of incredible scientific breakthroughs, but it is also highly susceptible to absolute nonsense. Science is a process of trial and error, and unfortunately, millions of people had to be the errors so we could eventually find the right path. So the next time you have to take a bitter-tasting medicine or get a slightly painful vaccine, just remember, at least your doctor isn't handing you a glass of glowing radiation and a tapeworm. Stay curious, question everything, and I will see you in the next episode of History Glitch.